Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello again, I'm Johnny Mac with a Stephen Colbert-based bonus episode. There was a normal episode of Daily Comedy News in the feed earlier Monday. This is an episode for Monday, middle of the day. Let's start with friend of the show, Gianmarco Ceresi. He was on MSNBC.
What do you make of his cancellation? I mean, give me your big takeaway pictures. Are you buying that it's financial? Is it sad to see the end of such a kind of iconic brand and franchise?
It could be financial, and, Epstein could have liked Trump for his drawings. Anything's possible.
Interesting reporting from Variety, who said, I guess last week, the phrasing is earlier this week, but it's Monday morning, so I guess last week, Skydance chief David Ellison met with FCC chair Brendan Carr and others at the commission to lobby for the deal's approval. And notably, Ellison promised that CBS's editorial decision-making reflects the varied ideological perspectives of American viewers. In a February 7th Fox News interview, FCC chairman Brendan Carr commented on Trump's lawsuit against CBS and said the president, quote, has been right on these media bias issues. On Tuesday, January 15th, Ellison and his lawyer met with Carr. According to a letter posted in the FCC's docket, Ellison and Brill is Ellison's lawyer, emphasized the public interest benefits of the Skydance Paramount transaction and, quote, we also urge the Media Bureau to promptly grant approval of the transfer of the CBS licenses to, quote, new Paramount. According to the filing, quote, we made clear that Mr. Ellison will lead New Paramount with a talented team of executives focused on American storytelling. A lot to unpack there in Variety. Rob Schneider wrote an opinion piece for Fox News. Rob Schneider writes, respectfully, Stephen Colbert has been doing nothing but wafer thinly disguised Democratic propaganda talking points for the last 8 years plus. While I completely support Mr. Colbert's freedom of speech, his utter disdain for half of America in every swing state greatly diminished his audience potential. I also respect Colbert's direct criticism of his employer, CBS Paramount, and his opinion that they caved to President Trump when they settled their lawsuit against the sitting president. That took guts. I'll give him that. But Colbert, like ABC late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, excluded conservatives completely from his show and limited, parentheses prevented, his audience from hearing opposing viewpoints. Colbert fed liberal slop to his liberal-minded Kamala supporters and cared less about challenging them intellectually by actually appealing to their higher nature or engaging in thought-provoking debate. Nah, just keep crapping on half the country that's no longer afraid to say women don't have penises and boys shouldn't get to beat up girls in girls' sports. So while I support Mr. Colbert's First Amendment right for free speech, great point, Rob Schneider. Yeah. As for CBS Paramount, they're a private company and they have to pay the bills, or used to, so they can fire anyone they want. And Colbert, who earned an estimated $20 million salary, was reportedly losing the company $40 million per year. Several more paragraphs there, then Rob ends with, I wish Mr. Colbert much success in whatever he does next. Show business is a tough business. Rob was on Fox and Friends.
Colbert never had me on his show. Neither has Jimmy Kimmel or, I guess I was on a couple times early. But look, it's... Here's what happens. Like, Colbert already cut the pie. It's a pizza. He already cut it in half. His potential audience, he cut it in half with it just by cutting out all conservatives at all, not caring about, the 47 states that may have a different opinion than the Democratic Party of open borders and women have junk between their legs. We have to, and so he had half the pie already gone, and then he has to divide that pizza in 3 slices with Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, and then he's working for a third of a piece of pie, and that's just. It's not going to pay the bills. They have 200 employees, and frankly, I have more people will watch this on Twitter than for his advertising group that everybody on TV seems to still think is important. That 18 to 35 group, and it's just that audience isn't there anymore. The late night show is a relic, but the thing about it, which was special when I was a kid, when we were my family, we were all climbing mom and dad's bed and watching TV, Johnny Carson, was he made the show for everybody. He didn't alienate anyone. And you never knew who he kind of thought that these guys all leaned left, like most of the media. But you never knew 100%. And that's kind of a beautiful thing. And I hope it goes back to that.
Rosie O'Donnell jumped on Instagram on Sunday and wrote, "Hey, Tangerine Trump. First, you said I should be stripped of my citizenship. Now you're publicly celebrating that Stephen Colbert lost his job. You've never understood the role of comedy or the role of truth. You think silencing a comedian means you've won something? You haven't. Stephen stood up to you like so many of us have, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. He told the truth with wit and courage, night after night, while you used your platform to spread fear, lies, and hate. John Oliver was in Erie, Pennsylvania. He was part of that stunt to rebrand the baseball team the Moon Mammoths. He was asked about Stephen Colbert. John Oliver said, I love Stephen. I love his staff. I love that show. It's incredibly sad. I'm partly excited to see what they're going to do the next 10 months. It's terrible, terrible news for the world of comedy. Late night shows mean a lot to me, not just because I work in them, but because even growing up in England, I would watch Letterman's show, which of course was Stephen's show, and think about what a glamorous world that was. So to have got to be on Letterman's show and Stephen's show has always been one of the most fun things. So it's very, very sad news. I look forward to seeing what he's going to do next because that man will not stop. Now, the Wall Street Journal jumped in. Again, I think many things can be true at once. My spidey sense is tingling with the timing here in the merger deal, but also the numbers and the financials. As you look at all this, it's not crazy talk to end this show. Perhaps there's a scenario where you could do some cost cutting or figure something out. But the Journal points out, Colbert has 2.4 million viewers most nights, less than 1% of the country. It's a tiny fraction of Johnny Carson's viewership at a time when the nation was smaller. The Late Show's audience has fallen more than 30% in the past 5 years, and even more among the 18 to 49s. Colbert's operation reportedly cost north of $100 million annually and hemorrhaged $40 million last year, nearly half being the host's salary. The Journal writes, America depends on a shared sense of we. Boomers and Gen X once found some of that on late-night TV. For millennials and Gen Z, a fragmented media ecosystem that's insufficiently popular to sustain a common culture presents real challenges. Any revolution would not be televised. It would be streamed from 1,000 angles across 1 million platforms. The New Yorker happens to have a piece by Stephen Colbert this week. It is titled Stephen Colbert on Kenneth Tynan's Profile of Johnny Carson. Apparently, there was a good profile of Carson in 1978. Colbert wrote, that article is 20,000 words. Skipping ahead, while I host a show in the same time slot and tradition as Carson, I am not Johnny. Neither was, quote-unquote, Johnny, who was described as an eighth of Carson, the rest being hidden behind Midwestern and professional rectitudes and a protective sodality, a lot of big words here, of producers, lawyers, and execs who pronounce Johnny a reformed drinker, loving son, and husband faithful to the point of celibacy. True or false, do we care? Johnny or Johnny, he was there every night like the tide, and we loved him. I have the Carson books. I've watched the Carson bios. I have a dear friendship with his old writer and peer, Dick Cavett. One disappointment. Tynan presents no process. How did Johnny arrive at, quote, between 16 and 22 surefire jokes per monologue? What happened behind that rainbow curtain? I know the article's about the man, not the job, but we're told the show is Johnny. Johnny is the show. You'll find that in the print edition, July 28th, 2025 issue of The New Yorker. The Town podcast, they did this as an aside. They were talking about the Colbert of it all. They said Mulaney on Netflix was getting 500,000 viewers, 500,000 for Mulaney. I don't know if that thing's coming back. Maybe just with the zeitgeist, they think people will rally behind Mulaney. But like I said when the show was airing, season 2, I didn't think the show was working creatively, and I didn't think it was really capturing a buzz, and I may have been right. Friend of the show, Jason Zinnemann in the New York Times writes, getting canceled may end up being the best thing that's ever happened to Stephen Colbert. The same cannot be said for its impact on late-night television. His quick improv, honed wit, and intellectual depth could feel hamstrung by the show's short segments, and sometimes when he got on a good riff or dug into an area of major interest, you wondered if it would fit better on a podcast. Zinnemann writes, late-night television is not finished. In fact, you could say we're reverting to the era before the early 90s, when NBC dominated and there were occasionally network alternatives. The loss of The Late Show is not the death knell, but it is a death knell. If video killed the radio star, who did in the network late-night superstar? The internet is the primary suspect, increasing competition, chipping away at ad dollars, and transforming the time at which we watch these shows, making the term late night itself a misnomer. All caps. Of course money matters, but so does the climate in which it's allocated. Late night used to be, among other things, a prestige business. The hosts were some of the key faces of the network. On top of profits, the shows generated press attention, in-house promotion, and buzz. Now media bosses seem more willing to cut a check for millions of dollars to make a political problem go away rather than spend that money to keep their late night show. Yeah, I talked about this in one of the other bonuses. Now, at some point, you have to ask the question, who are we? Fox shows sports and animation. Maybe CBS is looking at that and going, all right, why don't we just do our procedurals from 8 to 11? We'll show some football during the fall. And why do we have a late night show? Not crazy. The Hollywood Reporter wondered what's next for Colbert, and they pointed out while he lives in New Jersey, he's from South Carolina, and one of those states' Senate seats is open next year. Colbert has joked about the idea of running for office for years. When asked directly about this in 2007, Larry King asked if Colbert would ever consider running for president. And again, that's 2007, a lifetime ago in some ways. Colbert said, obviously, every boy's thought of it. And when you look at a field of candidates like this, so that's the 2008 campaign, and trailed off. I thought about that a lot over the weekend. Stephen Colbert is 61, so he'd be 63, 64 when the next election rolls around. He's nice looking. He's telegenic. He's good at the art of the media. He's not 80 years old. The people who don't like him, Rob Schneider apparently, already don't like him, so there's no loss there. If I'm the Democrats, I'm calling Stephen Colbert today. If you're not already on the phone with him, you should be. I don't know if he would want the gig, but boy, if they rolled him out as a candidate, very interesting. The current holder of the office, among other things on his resume, hosted a show called The Apprentice and was really good at media. And looking ahead to tonight, Late Nighter points out, let's pay a lot of attention to Jon Stewart tonight. Colbert and Stewart are friends. Jon Stewart is an EP on The Late Show. They share the same manager, James Baby Doll Dixon. We'll see what Jon has to say. And that is a bonus episode. Back in the morning with a normal episode. It was a very busy weekend, just in case you haven't caught everything. Going back Friday morning's episode where I recapped Shane Gillis, I thought was strong. And then it's just been bonus, regular, bonus, regular, bonus, regular. I'll be back in the morning. See you then. Thanks for listening.